Greetings. ABC News has released an article entitled The 10 Million Names Project. This is a project of researchers, genealogists, who are led by Dr. Kendra Field. And they are attempting to recover and restore the names of over 10 million Africans who were enslaved here in America. The project's goal is to identify the ancestors of the now living 44 million African descendants here in the United States of America. Recovering these personal identities will surely be a challenge due to records and data that is necessary to reconstruct these past names and these personalities of these enslaved Africans. So they put out a call. They would like for people to contribute their personal diaries, personal effects, private correspondence, anything that we may have to help them restore a database to reconstruct these lives. This project is a very serious project, and it is deeper than what it seems on the surface. Because you have to understand, there are questions that must be asked. The main question is, what was the overall impact of enslavement upon African people? Thousands of miles of fertile country turned into wilderness, with the hundreds and thousands of elephants slain and millions of human beings utterly destroyed. When you think about the physical suffering, the loss of life, the devastation of land, you have to ask yourself, but what about this deeper social impact of this destruction upon the consciousness and the lives of African people, and how does that affect their descendants today? When you look around, you look at us as African people, African descendants, America, we seem to have lost our way. What do I mean by that? Today, as opposed to our ancestors at least 50 years ago, today we seem to be at each other's throats, taking sides against ourselves. We are like boats without rudders. We are as a compass with a broken needle. It seems we don't know which direction to go. We aren't our own friends. We are no longer our own saviors. What has this destruction done to us? And in recovering these names, reconstructing the identities associated with these names, possibly becoming familiar with their stories, their tragedies, their triumphs, maybe we can understand who and where we are today as a people. With that, what exactly is a name? A name gives reference to land, history, and culture. It is through names that we identify ourselves to the world. It is through names that we identify ourselves to each other. Names teach us about our culture. It gives us a sense of cultural integrity. With our names, we are easily placed on a social sphere whereby we are able to relate one to the other. You are known by your name. Your name carries the history of your family and your community. This is the power that people have. But with this destruction of the European, we seem to have lost, we have lost the ability to define ourselves, to define our purpose in our lives today. The scholar Ngugi wa Thiong'o, Kenyan scholar, in his book, Something Torn and New in African Renaissance, had this to say: Europe has also planted its memory on the bodies of the colonized. In his attempt to remake the land and its peoples in his image, the conqueror acquires and asserts the right to name the land and its subjects, demanding that the subjugated accept the names and culture of the conqueror. So what does Ngugi wa Thiong'o means? He means that we have lost our memory, and that since we wear the names of the European, we have his memory. We no longer have ours. And since we experienced under his being conquered or colonized by him, we experienced what the scholar also calls linguicide, which is in terms genocide, but from the point of view of language, the total annihilation and destruction of a people's language. And we have to understand that for African people, words were universal agents of creation. They were universal agents of creation. These were tools that Africans used to form their reality. And this can be found all across Africa in African high cultures. Africans looking at the word as being an all-powerful agent of change. I'll give you one example. In ancient Kemet, They had a word for divine speech, which was medu neter. And in order to achieve medu neter, divine speech, you had to have medu nefer, which was good speech. Our ancestors knew this. They knew that our reality was created through our consciousness. So they had no confusion with regards to their land, their history, their culture, and their purpose in life. Most of us here in America speak English and only English. This is the linguicide and the lingua famine that Ngugi wa Thiong'o spoke of. And without our own languages, we don't have the tools to properly restructure our lives, to give us purpose, to help us understand what we are faced with, and more importantly, what we must do. With that, we must also understand that the power to name something is to give it meaning in the world, as you know. It means that that thing exists. So not only do the people of ancient Kemet had perspectives with regards to divine speech, I would like to say that a name constitutes the essence of a person, and that Africans understood this. And they understood that speech was something that was sacred. The Dogon, for instance, they knew that water was the principal agent of life, that we all on this planet, we need water. It's a vital force for life, for everything living. And according to the Dogon, that the breath is a vapor, a form of water, which maintains and indeed is the principle of life as we know it. So to Africans and for us today, we understand how powerful our words are. We must keep this in mind. There's a book called Infidel by Ayaan Hirsi Ali. And in the opening chapter, she talks about how she was compelled to recall and recount the names of her ancestors going back 300 years by her grandmother. Just think of that. You had to recount the names of your ancestors going back 300 years. And she said eventually she would have to learn the names of her ancestors going back for at least 800 years. And they were compelled to do this because no matter where they were in the world, if they were to run across any African, particularly their kinsman or someone from their region, that they can go back far enough in their lineage and history that they would eventually run across a common ancestor. And then those people who would meet for the first time would be compelled to help each other because they would realize that they were not indeed strangers, but relatives. I find that story remarkable. It shows you the power of knowing who you are. And as her grandmother said, if she didn't learn those names, that she would die lonely and she would be abandoned by her ancestors, because since she didn't know them, that they wouldn't know her. And for us today, talking about the destruction of African people, the word nigger, which was used by the destroyer, by the conquerors, by the colonizer, to dehumanize us, to defame us, to destroy our consciousness and sense of self-worth. This was something, an epithet and pejorative term that we distance ourselves from. In fact, we strove for excellence. We had many great feats being in this country of accomplishment. The Harlem Renaissance, we had thriving black metropolises all across the country. Black people were committed to excellence, being the great innovators that we were, bringing beautiful fruits of life, flowing and flourishing in this country, even under the yoke of oppression, terrorism, and degradation, and the whip, the lash, and the noose, and the gun. Even under all of this pressure, we still excelled at new heights. But today, we are faced with something that seems to be insurmountable. Hip hop has been instrumental in transmitting this concept, this word nigger. There have been other vehicles for its use, but it has proliferated more so through the channels of hip hop than any other thing that we have come in contact with in this country. And like one of my teachers, Kinjide Banachi Montgomery, has said in the past, Europeans enslaved Africans, but they created niggers. So there's a behavior attached, inextricably attached, to what we call ourselves and what we are called. This is not rocket science, or this is not some mythological talk. That when you name something, it exists. And this is why names were so important in African people, naming ceremonies and the like. In fact, there's a biblical scripture. We're talking about Proverbs 18 verse 21, where it says, death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those who love it will eat its fruit. As you can see, even in the Judeo-Christian tradition, it is understood how powerful words are and how powerful things are that have names. Again, it's how we construct our reality. Words define reality. This is indeed the source of our powerlessness here in America. But again, as one of our scholars, Dr. Wade Nobles, has always said, that power is the ability to define reality and then have others use those definitions as if they were their own. This is what I was saying about the word nigger. It's not our term, but it's a term used to dehumanize us. But we use that term casually as a term of endearment, but it's actually a destructive term which emits destructive behavior. So in closing, I think it's a good thing for this project, this 10 million names project. It is a benefit for us to connect with the past, because without the past, there is no present. You know, in the spirit of Sankofa, which means san, to return, ko, to go, fa, to pick up. That means to go back, to learn from the past, to learn from those mistakes, those triumphs, the tragedies, the accomplishments, and use those lessons and consequences to improve our lives today, so that we can have a better future tomorrow, not only for ourselves, but our children's children. We must restore ourselves. I think this project will be good. If it is to come into fruition, it will be an extreme benefit for recovering our history, to restore our personalities and dignity in the present for a better future tomorrow. Without understanding who we were, without our names, who are we on this global theater? Who are we if we have European names? As the quote from Sterling Stuckey's book said, it takes us back to Europe, being Williams, Jones, Paul, Lawrence. These names take us away from Africa. Even if we have Arab names, those names take us into Arabia. What about our African names? What about African continuity? In the spirit of our ancestors, I thank you for listening. Please press subscribe, share this video, and please leave comments. Thank you, and peace and blessings.